Welcome to the Future of Luxury podcast, where we explore the cutting edge of the luxury industry with the world's leading authority, Dr. Daniel Langer. Dr. Langer is the founder and CEO of Hecate Brands, the world's leading brand strategy and activation firm, and professor of luxury at Pepperdine University. Join us as we dive into the trends shaping the future of luxury, from millennial and Gen Z influence to digital disruption. With unique perspectives shared from the world's most knowledgeable experts in the field. Brought to you by Hecate Intelligence, the global leader in luxury strategy and brand innovation. This podcast is your backstage pass to the world of extreme value creation and luxury's next big moves. So without further ado, Dr. Daniel Langer.
So it's my great pleasure to welcome to this episode of the podcast. I have to say, Thorsten, I don't think that I said this personally to you yet, but I have to say an idol of mine, and Thorsten Müller-Ötvös, the former CEO of Rolls-Royce Motorcars, obviously a company that doesn't even need an introduction, and also a personality that doesn't need an introduction. And Thorsten, why I say to me an idol is that, having observed the industry and also worked with a few brands in the industry over the last couple of years, you were always to me, maybe the person in luxury automotive who was always the most consequent in thinking not just about the car, but, also in being very transformative in thinking about, not only what luxury really is, but what the storytelling behind the brand should be. And I have used quite often the example of inspiring greatness that you created with your team as, to me, a best-in-class example of how to make something that already is, in a sense, from a product perspective, the pinnacle of luxury, but also relevant and tangible, how to make a transformation from the previous generation of owners who, in many cases, where still, at least this was the myth, chauffeured in their cars, to people that really enjoy themselves driving such a wonderful vehicle. So it's my absolute pleasure to have you here today and discuss with you, I think, something that we are both very passionate about, actually two topics at the same time. One is luxury and the second is automotive. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Daniel. And thanks a lot for your kind words. But I can also replicate them in a way that I think you are known as one of the big luxury thought leaders worldwide. So for that reason, I thought great to join your podcast. And I'm very much looking forward to our talks here.
Yeah, wonderful. And Thorsten, maybe describe a little bit your for everyone who knows you but maybe doesn't know all the details of your career. Maybe describe a little bit in a few words your career, but also maybe the transformation that you were able to initiate at Rolls-Royce.
All right. Couple of words. I mean, I would consider myself being a brand aficionado, somebody who really understands branding, building brands, revitalizing brands. I was for a long time with the BMW Group, got the chance to revitalize Mini at times and relaunch Mini. And then was later asked, now nearly 16 years ago, if I could imagine to take the helm at Rolls-Royce Motorcars. Oh, wow, something obviously I didn't need to sleep on. I mean, that brand is world famous, as you said, Daniel. And it's a brand, by the way, that is the expression of luxury anyhow in itself. Yeah, many use it as the TV or the Rolls-Royce of TV sets or the Rolls-Royce of kitchens or whatever. So when I came at times, and that was January 2010, I found a brand, and the brand was already owned by the BMW Group. That was, I would call it, back at the pinnacle of automotive business, but probably not at levels where you see the brand today. Because when I joined, the brand was very much male, nearly 100% male. pretty much on a pedestal, so also perceived as arrogant, pretty conservative, slightly old-fashioned. And for that reason, in my view, a change was needed. And what I did at times, I interviewed a lot of private banks when I joined, and just to find out more about ultra high net worth individuals. And there was quite some surprising overlap in their opinion. And that was, they all predicted a pretty fundamental change in the demographics and psychographics of the ultra high net worth individuals. They would get far younger. Money will be made in new ways, different ways, digital, new business venture, less inherited money, far more females. Casual behaviors would be name of the games, and they all are hungry to enjoy life. Spend the money and to enjoy life. And also, enjoy life is for me that hunger for experiences. And to cut it short, it came exactly as they predicted in January and February 2010 when I conducted all these interviews. But for me also, it became immediately obvious that this would require a fundamental change in the brand positioning and product strategy for Rolls-Royce Motorcars. So in a nutshell, major steps at times and during my time with Rolls-Royce were that we did a systematic change in our client relations posture. So really lifting client centricity, Daniel, to an outstanding level. I'm fully convinced that this is super important in the luxury business, that you are extremely close with your clients, that you are basically reading their wishes before they even know their wishes. And obviously, we also changed the brand identity, and we put, you mentioned it already, we put inspiring greatness into the core of that brand identity. I mean, it's a big promise, yeah, inspiring greatness, because everything you do needs to be inspiring greatness. But it worked extremely well, particularly, funny enough, with younger clients. And that obviously then we complemented with a visual identity that also embodies that house of luxury aesthetics. Very important for me to get away from the typical automotive atmosphere into that house of luxury aesthetics. Then I'm a big believer in storytelling. I think people are hungry for brand stories. So the whole press and comms work was shifted into what I call a storytelling machine over times. And then obviously during my time, we also changed the model policy, focusing on a far younger and self-driving clientele. You said it. When I joined, 80% of all clients were sitting in the back, so being chauffeured. And after I left, it was exactly the opposite. 80% were sitting behind the wheel, driving themselves, and 20% in the back. And that is also due to the fact that the clients became very, very young over time. Changed average age at times from 56 when I joined, average age, down to 42, 43 when I left. So it was a massive rejuvenating project that happened here over nearly 15 years. And I would say we were also able to add the cool and must-have factor to the brand, very important in particular with social media. So that was a great story and a great journey, I must say, obviously not only out of my own brain, but together with my team, but at times really a fundamental change in the brand perception.
Wonderful. And you already mentioned when you spoke about the clients, how the clients have been changing and how client expectations have changed. Maybe let's elaborate a little bit on that, and especially now if you think about the last couple of years, as you observe the clients, and also as I know that you have been always very, very close to your clients. How would you describe, from if you take the era around maybe the early 2000s and maybe to the transition to now? If we speak about high net worth individuals, what would be maybe a few tangible things that you have observed that changed in their behaviors, in their aspirations?
I would say, Daniel, when let's say 15 years ago, in my perception, luxury was still pretty much bling, to call it like that. Very status oriented, And also, I call it off the shelf. Yeah, you were just shopping something. And luxury brands were simply just a symbol of exclusivity and status. And the more expensive, the higher the status, basically. Very easy, very simple. And that has obviously not gone away, but was enriched massively over time with things like importance of craftsmanship, importance of storytelling, new levels of customer centricity, engaging clients, taking clients into a journey with your brand, giving clients the chance to see behind the curtain of your brand, understanding how important sustainability will be also for luxury brands, offer unique experiences. I think there is, in the meantime, a strong wish by the clients, ultra high net worth individuals in particular, to belong to the brand. You are part of a family. You are not just shopping something. So the product itself is still important, but as much as important today is all the services. Everything you do around for them, everything you do in terms of invitation, giving them the chance to tour the plants, seeing how you manufacture, telling stories about your craftsmanship levels, that has become so important over times. And I would say most important, and now I'm back to Rolls-Royce, is probably the development of bespoke. So nobody any longer wants to buy something off the shelf. That is something that is no longer relevant. Everybody wants to put their own masterpiece together with designers, together with a brand to say, this is my special Rolls-Royce. I've crafted it, I've designed it, that carries my story. Very, very important. I dare to say that without bespoke, Rolls-Royce would not exist any longer.
Yeah. Now this is fascinating, and maybe let's dive a little bit into that, because I think also for one of the to me the projects that and I think they were in the department that you created, or in the I think you call it coach. Is it coach building?
Coach build is the pinnacle of bespoke. And Anja, is obviously, that was always in my dream shortly after I joined, because I also read a lot about the history of the brand. And in former times, the Roaring 20s, coach build was the name of the game. Everybody designed his own Rolls-Royce. So the chassis was delivered by Rolls-Royce Motorcars, and then coach builders came and designed together with you the body. That unfortunately was technical-wise not any longer possible. And my dream was one day I want to bring it back. The reason behind it is a lot of, let's say, legal constraints and legal requirements you need to fulfill with crash tests and everything in the meantime in the automotive industry. For that reason, coach build is, and we reinvented it at times, really the pinnacle of bespoke by invitation of the CEO only. So it is something that a normal client or regular client or somebody who is not, let's say, already in the process with Rolls-Royce Motorcars for many years would not get the offer. You need to be a top-notch client to get the offer to participate in a coach build project.
Yeah, and I was very impressed by some of these extraordinary projects that you realized with Coach Build. And to me, I had always the feeling as an observer, of course, that to me it was really like these rare opportunities where you could really show the world something that they've never seen before.
Yeah,
and
right.
I feel, how would you say that this also influenced the perception of Rolls-Royce? You made it quite, I think, a powerful statement before, where you said maybe Rolls-Royce without bespoke would not exist anymore today. So how important would you say were these extraordinary projects for the brand?
Extremely important, because extraordinary projects are marveled by the client, and the press worldwide was in awe when they saw it, obviously.
Yeah.
It is testament that you really go extra miles, many extra miles, and it underlines all the investment we have put into bespoke, because that was not an easy game. That was changing production, employing new skills into the company, facilitating new ideas in design and so on, looking for new materials and new technologies to make that all happen.
Yeah.
So it is testament for what I would call the normal bespoke business, that when you are a client who is not coach building your Rolls-Royce, you are bespoking your Rolls-Royce, you know that you are part of that unbelievable dream, that you can build your own car, your dream, and that you commission something that is out of your brain. So it was image-wise very important also in a hello way for our normal bread and butter bespoke business at times. And then obviously it also created an unbelievable hype around the pricing. And we never talked in any way about the pricing of these cars, but the press started to speculate. Who is the owner? 20 million. We heard 20 million and so on. And we never commented on it. So that also helped to set price levels, even higher levels. It allowed the brand to move up in a way of unbelievable. The most expensive car ever built came from Rolls-Royce Motorcars. I mean, that is a testament, not from our side, but by the press worldwide, which is gold standard. And obviously, particular for a luxury brand, gold standard.
Yeah.
For that reason, I think it was fundamentally important to position the brand.
Yeah, you know, it was quite interesting, and I think it's something that you don't know yet, but it was very very early in my kind of early days is tapping into luxury when I started with a doctoral thesis into the topic. I had the idea of, because I was always fascinated by pricing and by how do you price something, and I had the idea to create what I called the luxury index. And this is basically a way how to compare categories with each other in terms of pricing. So in a sense, it's basically a proxy for the luxuriousness in a category, taking the kind of base product that has the bare bone functionality. So let's say if we would speak about shoes, you would look at a category for basically the cheapest shoe and the kind of the most simple shoe that still allows you kind of to walk with your feet protected. And then you take the most extreme shoe, and the most extreme in a way of what was the willingness of a customer to pay the price. And so we basically the most extreme and divided it with the price point of the cheapest one, and then I compared 100 categories with each other. Some categories were durables, so they were like cars, for example. And then I was also fascinated and said, what if I look into categories that are in a sense, let's call them perishable, or that disappear, like, you know, when you go to a restaurant and have a dinner, or when you buy maybe a bottle of wine, and then, you know, after consumption the bottle is empty. And so then I was thinking, are there correlations? So can I say basically maybe one category is non-durable, maybe the luxuriousness is somehow limited. This logic would suggest it. And I found a couple of really fascinating insights. The first was, it didn't matter whether durable or non-durable. We find really, you know, I think one of I wrote a couple of articles about that, was a breakfast omelette that a hotel in New York City was serving. And this omelette was originally sold for $1,000, making it the most expensive omelette in the world. And then you take, let's say, a breakfast omelette that you can get in a coffee shop around the corner, and then you make the mess, and you see there's a huge delta in value creation between that extreme omelette and the normal one. And then I looked into also the car category and looked at that time what was the most expensive car, which I believe, and this was around, I think we speak around 2008, 2009. I think it was probably the Bugatti Veyron at that time.
Bugatti Veyron, yeah, right.
And then we compared that with the cheapest car money can buy, which at that time I think was the Tata Nano on the market, and you got to quite interesting results. And one of the results was that actually, and this was quickly correlated between the omelette and cars. I saw the omelette category could actually be pricier if I compare this with some other categories. And also cars were interestingly low in terms of price. And at that time, we spoke about a Bugatti Veyron for about, I think it was €1 million so roughly. And I remember being interviewed by Automotive and Sport, by the German car magazine at that time. And I made a provocative statement, said the most expensive cars are too cheap. And I remember being roasted then afterwards. I said, this idiot, cars are already too expensive. And then comes this luxury researcher and says cars should be more expensive. And I run the numbers. And I thought at that time, just comparing categories. So, for example, now you take the handbag category or you take shoe categories and so on. I was saying if I apply just the same logic of how much luxury value was created in other categories in a relative term, cars could be priced up to about $100 million. This was kind of what the maths was saying. And so, and then I published a couple of articles saying there should be a 20 or 30 or $50 million car. But the thing is, someone has to figure out how to do it. And even if there's maybe no official comment on what those coach building cars cost, but I think you went relatively close to that, at least to that dimensions. And that for me was really, I was very, in a sense, very proud of what you guys were doing there at Rolls-Royce, because it showed that if you apply the right storytelling, if you apply the right, also the right creativity, ingenuity, and also the right inspiration, you actually can build products that create so much value that people actually pay for those values. Although maybe for millions of people that seems to be absurd price points, but if the story is right, for that one person who you now create something truly personal and unique, it's absolutely worth that price point.
I fully agree, Daniel. I would also add that obviously clients today in the luxury segment are pretty savvy about product substance. They understand what do they buy for the money, and they want to understand what do they buy for the money. So coming back to your omelette point of 2000 or whatever the omelette was, I must say there must be something superb behind it in terms of storytelling or some other additional services that make these omelettes so perfect that you are prepared to pay the price. I think the biggest danger for luxury brands currently is a kind of overpromise and underdeliver. Yeah? And just to say, we can ask for skyrocketing prices. And then later, when you look into the substance and when you look into what you really buy and what kind of, sorry to say, cachet image you are buying, you scratch your head and you think, no, guys, that's no longer, in my view, justified, and you overpriced it because storytelling was not great, substance is not great, the value is not really in the product. And that is something that, in my view, has changed massively. That was at your time when you did your thesis. That was 15, 20 years ago. There, I think, and that is why I mentioned bling was important for people. The brand logo in itself carried so much power that it didn't matter what the substance was. The main thing was, I own this brand. And that is now not longer possible in my way. You have very educated, highly skilled people, particularly social media, made a lot out about what is the true substance behind the brand. What are you really buying? What do you get? You invest 5-6 million into a Rolls-Royce or whatever the number is. And I think rightly so. And if you don't observe that, and if you don't follow that kind of intelligence, then you might end up in overpromise and underdeliver.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is something that right now, if we look at the current state of the luxury industry, heading now into this new year, the last Bain study came in a few weeks ago, and to me it was almost like a wake up call for the industry, because what Bain identified was that about half of luxury customers that they surveyed were saying luxury brands, as a kind of general statement, are overpriced. And this is something that in all my years as an observer and also in a sense to participate in this industry, I've never seen numbers like that. Yes, luxury has never been perceived as cheap, so to speak, but that 50% of potential customers say that certain brands are overpriced goes exactly in the direction that you are saying. And I think that a mistake that has been done in the last probably 2-3 years, also after the pandemic, when also demand was starting to skyrocket. I have the feeling there were probably simply some brands that took, and I use now the word on purpose, maybe a little bit advantage of the clients and of the demand, and said, okay, we increase price because we can, to a point where people say, okay, if I don't understand, like what you just said, the value proposition, if I don't understand why I should pay the money, they're not going to do that. And I think this is also something, and I would be curious about your experience on that, because you have been probably closer to many high net worth individuals than probably most other luxury executives, as you have been very, very, in all your travels, you've always met with and so on. I'm pretty sure that you probably never ever met anyone who would want to waste their money. They all want to know what.
Guess what? The reason why they are so, let's say, successful and why they are ultra high net worth individuals is because they're extremely smart with money. And for that reason, they clearly understand what substance means to them. And they also have a long-lasting memory. If they feel cheated by a brand, they will never forget, I can tell you. And this will bite you later. Some brands, as you rightly said, Daniel, made a kind of profit after the pandemic time by unreasonably raising prices because demand was given. But that was a very short notice strategy, in my view, and completely neglected that clients are intelligent and they are shrewd, to use that expression in a positive meant way, and that they would not be fooled by any things you are doing with them. So, and that is now a kind of period where all the brands who overdid it are now retuning and readjusting on or back to levels where I would say substance, brand image, and price is back into a balance. And that obviously brings many analysts and many observers into that feeling that, oh, luxury is dead, luxury is in a problem, and the luxury brands, stock markets tanks with luxury brands and so on. Yeah, rightly so, because again, an overpromise at times, and now they underdeliver.
Yeah, it's in the end, it's always fascinating because, in the end, it's not rocket science. If the value to me in luxury is always about extreme value, and as long as brands are able to deliver extreme value, then there will be clients that are willing to value the value and then to also pay the price points. But if they feel they're not getting what people are asked to pay for, then it's very natural. Then it feels overpriced. It reminds me a little bit, for example, when I advise hospitality brands. One thing that I see sometimes, traveling, is you always, I would say, in most cases, you forget how much you paid for the hotel room. And if New York City, for example, or now today I'm in Shanghai. Yes, it's natural that you pay a few $100s for a room. But don't charge me $10 for the bottle of water, because we know how much a bottle of water costs. So and then we have experiences in other hotels where maybe the bottle of water is complimentary, and now I go to one hotel where suddenly is this $10? And then I ask myself, really? And these are the things I think where many mistakes are done by by not delivering value, but then charging for it. And these are, as you said, things that people will never forget.
No, I mean, that's penny wise, but pound foolish. That's for sure. Yeah. And I think also on top came, and maybe going back to that period where the whole market was in full swing, that many brands neglected also that, I call it now, scarcity theme, which is highly, highly important for luxury brands. So the more you push volume into the market, the less attractive it is for many, many clients to acquire your brand. And that was also happening right after the pandemic. People flooded the shops with, or the brands flooded the shops with stuff. And I think always keep your brand rare and live up to, the promise of scarcity and luxury.
Yeah. I want to get back to something that you said a little bit earlier in our conversation, the impressive rejuvenation that you managed to bring into Rolls-Royce Motorcars. And part of this rejuvenation, of course, was a transition of the portfolio with the launch of Cullinan and Spectra under your leadership. And I would love to talk to you a little bit about, how you were able to inspire greatness and the idea around this into the launches of both brands. And I have to say, I found personally also when I observed the launch of Cullinan, to me it was really a best in class example of a line or portfolio extension, because I would imagine that the challenges for Cullinan were quite significant, and this could have been a project that could have also broken the company if it's not executed in the right way. So maybe if you could share a little bit the personal learnings of that launch, and what were like kind of critical factors to help customers that probably were not even, I assume a lot of Cullinan customers were not even Rolls-Royce customers before. So maybe customers who knew the brand but never really experienced the brand. How do you bring let's use the word, the story of the brand to someone who never saw the brand?
Yeah, very good point. I mean, rightly so, as you said, it was something where during my time we took a long time to really develop the right product. That is true for Cullinan, but also was true for Spectre, the electric Rolls-Royce. Both products are controversial and were highly controversial in the beginning when first ideas, us mulling plans about it, leaked into the press. Oh, is this really possible? I mean, nobody would say no if you offer a convertible or a coupe or a lovely limousine. That is the natural turf of Rolls-Royce Motorcars, but an SUV at times definitely wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did, and now I come to a point which I personally think is super important, and that is storytelling. If you don't investigate a certain rationale behind the product and a link between product and brand, and we have done it, and guess what? We found a very interesting and marvelous story, and the story is Lawrence of Arabia. And Lawrence of Arabia used to drive together with his army armored Rolls-Royces through the deserts. And that was a fantastic story. And these Rolls-Royces were so reliable that he said a Rolls-Royce in the desert is more worth and more valuable than rubies. And this is a common say. And we started to develop that story. And we told everybody that there is big credential in us doing it, because formerly a Rolls-Royce was everywhere, even in the deserts with Lawrence of Arabia or in the outbacks of Australia. So the cars were extremely capable always. That was the history of the brand. So an SUV is a kind of natural development in that area. So that went down extremely well. Then on top came what I call a marvelous story around the naming. Cullinan, the largest ever found raw diamond in the world, sits in the crown jewels of Her Majesty in the UK. And all that in conjunction with the authenticity of, yes, we can go off-road and we can go everywhere, made it easy to find something that was very, very convincing. And then obviously we also got the design pretty right, I would say, in the beginning. It was truly a Rolls-Royce, because one thing I also believe is never give up your soul, never give up on your credentials. It needed to be a Rolls-Royce first and an SUV second. And that means magic carpet ride also needs to happen in a Rolls-Royce Cullinan. Everything you are used to is also happening in a Cullinan. It's used to from a Rolls-Royce. So that in the end opened up new garages for people who observed us for quite some time and also said, I guess not yet. I'm too young. Maybe in 10, 15 years, I'm in for a Rolls-Royce or whatever. And Cullinan changed massively that perception that this is suddenly something that is the number one car in the garage, and a car that was used for all, let's say, travel alternatives, school runs, going down to the yacht harbor with the family, using the car as your number one car in the household. That is also highly unconventional and was very unconventional for us at times, because clients in the segment of Rolls-Royces normally do have 7, 8, 9 cars in the garage at least. So for every certain purpose, a special car. And we were able to push other SUVs out of the garage and to enter with Cullinan. And that was important for us, that we were not cannibalizing the existing model range, but we wanted to look out for new clients who never had ever before in their life a Rolls-Royce in the garage.
Yeah, I think here I can just say also again from a personal experience. I have a friend who bought a Cullinan, and he also told me that this idea of inspire greatness is something that he feels every time when he goes into the car. He's also a very successful entrepreneur, but so it's for him almost a reminder every day of that he has to deliver greatness. So also a great link. And I remember also that and also again kudos to that, when you launched Cullinan, there were also, like, I think you had a collaboration with National Geographic. I remember there was some video that showed the car in this mission, I think, and then there was like a long video, almost like 17 minutes or so.
Yeah, we had different sequences of videos where the car toured basically superb off-road areas in the world, in the deserts, in the Scottish Highlands, all over, in Australia, in the outbacks. 100%. Well remembered, Daniel. You're right. That was, I would call it, a genius marketing story as well. Yeah, and gave the car massive credibility that it was possible to really do what we promised the car would deliver.
Yeah, and I remember I've shown that video to some of my marketing students in my luxury MBA classes, and I would say unisono the feedback was, after they were tortured, I have to say, because with the attention span today of Gen Zs that typically are 6 seconds, then you give them a 17-minute video to watch. Almost everyone afterwards said, when the video came to the end, said, I want this car. And that for me was, a remarkable testament how, as you said before, how critical storytelling is, but also how critical, almost to me, that video particularly was really giving in so many different dimensions a logic and a reason why someone needed that car, but without basically begging for that. Just there was to me, just a naturalness, an effortlessness to that, and still it was something very, very convincing. And so many other car videos or so, I don't even remember, but this was one where I thought it was so unusual, and so, I would say, also bold in a way how it was done. And I think, correct me, but I think that the entire launch campaign also, and this to me also was even very like a revolution in the automotive space, was mainly digital, if I remember well.
100%, yeah. It's anyhow that we, and at my time, mainly went digital because it is highly cost effective. And is something, obviously, we also had events with clients worldwide because I'm a true believer that you need to throw quite a lot of events and experiences with your clientele and your upcoming prospects. That was also where we invested substantial money into, but the rest was all into, let's say, as you say, social media and digital channels all over the world.
Yeah. And speaking about events, that brings me, I think, to another critical, I would say, success factor and critical topic in luxury, the experience. And I personally, and this is probably because I'm personally not yet a client of Rolls-Royce, so I'm a client of some other brands that most people would call probably luxury car brands. But I have to say that for me, in luxury automotive, maybe one of the Achilles heel can often be the customer experience, especially in this indirect model that so many brands are dependent on, where you have the dealership, and we all know some are better than others. And I'm always seem to be the unlucky one that get the bad dealers, so to speak, wherever I move to. But talk a little bit about the dealership experience, because I know from my own from my own history with car brands, whenever I broke up with a brand, it was always because of something that happened in the dealership experience.
Service later.
And very often, as you said, service. You arrive at the service place and you have an appointment, and then they tell you, no, you don't have an appointment. It's silly things that in the end let this experience break down. So I would be curious, because I can imagine that you had faced exactly the same challenges. What were things that you particularly paid attention to? What would you maybe recommend others to do? What are kind of the ingredients to make the client experience at the dealership or at the point of sale in general extraordinary?
I mean, just to put it simple, I would say training. That is key. Obviously, you need to develop a training that teaches people how to behave in the luxury atmosphere and how to deal with these very discerning clients. What do you need to do? So we developed during my time a program that was teaching basically everybody in Goodwood, in our worldwide partner networks, how to deal with clients. And that is obviously something where you can't rest. You need to do that constantly. And you also need to select the right people who are offering the services. Not everybody is capable to talk to the clients in the way how you want them to talk to the clients. And I think you also need to make decision who is fronting clients and who is not fronting clients, because the one who is fronting clients definitely needs the feeling and needs the capabilities to speak with clients on eye level and needs to read all the wishes from their eyes whilst speaking to them. Yeah. That's what they all expect from you. If you fail, you have a problem. I can't agree more. For that reason, that is the Achilles heel, as you said. And if you are not training your Achilles heel regularly, it might break, and then you have a problem. Yeah. So I also think that it is, and you see that with many brands, they all invest into brick and mortar, shops. But that's easy. And what is not easy is to find and train the right people who interact on highest levels, and to find them is difficult. So I think as a luxury brand, it requires that you are permanently on your toes, permanently. And that you are reaching out for new experiences, that you are training your people constantly on new levels, new ideas, and fascinating ways to impress the client. If you don't do that, and now it comes, that's my final point, you also need to pay your people properly, because you need good people to do that. And if you're not prepared to pay, you won't get the right level of people. But this service is crucial, is for me the neck breaker for luxury if it isn't executed in a proper way.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't agree more. And, that makes me also so enthusiastic that we will also do masterclasses together.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that. Yeah. And I think we have a lot to teach here, some other luxury brands who might want to get a bit of guidance here also from our side. What is important when it comes to service levels? How do you want to, what do we need to say? How do we teach the people and so on? And I think we both have lots of knowledge around that.
Yeah. I think it's going to be very, very exciting, and it's so, what you said also resonated so much with me, because sometimes, when I did a lot of over the last couple of years, but specifically in the last maybe 6-7 months, a lot of trainings, for example, in hospitality, or when take luxury hospitality, branded residences, and so on, and so very investment heavy categories where sometimes companies spend on one property, sometimes billions, when you take huge real estate developments. And then, the one thing that always flabbergasts me is there's no problem to spend $1 billion in real estate. But then all the factors that you just mentioned, paying the staff that then delivers to the client, paying them properly, and putting the right incentive systems in place that are not focusing on something transactional, but focusing actually on the client experience, really thinking strategically on how to incentivize that. But then also even trainings, the discussion that then sometimes are about training budgets somewhere, where again, unbelievable amount of money is spent on the hardware, and then you have let's say a beautiful palace, but within that beautiful palace, there is basically no content in there, or no soul, to use the word that you said before, and that is basically destroying so many things that could otherwise be mind-blowing. It takes something mind-blowing to something that is, just maybe a far cry from its potential.
100%. I can't agree more. And unfortunately, that is, people very often, or brands very often, think brick and mortar is safe. It's a good investment, whilst training is not a good investment, because our people might leave us tomorrow. I think that is very, very wrong in its opinion, because well-trained people and also well-paid people will stay extremely loyal to you, because they enjoy working for you, because you have put effort into them and you have trained them, and they will pay that back. I'm very convinced about it. At my times at Rolls-Royce, we opened so-called private offices worldwide, because not everybody could travel to Goodwood to see it all with their own eyes. So we opened private offices in all major capital cities in the world, and we invested here as well, heavy into training and heavy into how to interact with people. And I can tell you, when I left, 95% of the people in the private offices were still the people we employed at times when we generated the idea. So I'm a true believer that investment in people pays back in a very positive way for your brand.
Yeah, and I'm also convinced that if someone basically also feels, in the end, everything we are discussing comes back to how can we create value, and how can we make someone feel valued. So, and this is basically the perspective of the client, that, when they walk, let's say, to a car dealership, or to what you just described, the private office, that they feel valued, but it's also the employee, because if they get the right training, if they get basically the right support system at the hand, if they are basically get the right structure, then also they as a person can develop. So it's basically, if luxury is done right, to me is actually the most exciting category to be in, because then it creates like an ecosystem of value, where from the client to everyone involved, value is created. And if it's not done right, then it goes back to what you said earlier, when you talked about brands not delivering on their promise. Then it's just a beautiful frame without anything in that frame, and then this frame is going to collapse. People are not going to stay. Customers are not going to believe in it, and then going to run away.
I think in the luxury business, you need to be a perfectionist. I'm a perfectionist. That's also why I love that business, because you constantly need to go extra miles. And something that was right today is not any longer right the next day for the client. That also brings me back to points like events, Daniel, and invitations for clients. So if you had, let's say, good experiences with a kind of event format this year, don't bet on that for the next year. Next year is next year, and you need to develop new ideas, new things to attract your clients. All the clients at high-end sector have invitations from many, many other brands, and they have the chance to constantly compare. And many people don't think about it, that your clients are flooded with many ideas from other luxury brands. So you need to be on your toes to be always ahead of the curve and to find new ways to attract them and to enthuse your clients.
I think one thing that impressed me always is that you're probably from all from most of the leaders in the automotive industry, and potentially even in the luxury industry at large, probably the one that spend most time with one-on-one with clients. Maybe share a little bit your insights there. How important this personal touch and this personal time is for the client, also for you, inspiring yourself in your day to day.
I would say, Daniel, that was my lifeblood. So that gave me the thought and gave me the ideas. What I did, and I traveled a lot. Whenever I was on travels, we invited 10 to 15 clients, couples, for a beautiful, lovely evening dinner. And we chatted everything. We chatted business. We didn't chat automotive. We chatted business. We chatted what's going on currently in the country, what is important. And also for me, amazing to hear what other luxury brands they favor, for what reason do they favor them, and what was their latest and greatest experience with other brands. And that gave me superb insights. And I would consider myself as really pretty savvy in understanding the clientele. And I mean, after 14 years and at least 2 travels each month, I've seen quite a lot of clients. I wouldn't say I know every single client within Rolls-Royce Motorcars, but the organization definitely knows every single client. And one of my core beliefs at times when I joined was, when the client is the king, and the client is the king because only the client brings the money, nobody else, then we are serving that king, and that is the client. And for that reason, I wanted that all people ideally get as much contact with clients as possible. So we allowed clients to see the production line, to really look over the shoulders of the clients, and to talk with them, and to really interact with them, to hear it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah,
things need to be perfect, and the reason they are marveling Rolls-Royce is perfection in every single detail. And when you hear that from a client, then you have a complete different attitude and mindset suddenly than somebody who just got a training on that.
Yeah. This is fantastic, and this leads me to probably another challenge that many luxury brands are facing today, and this is the differences in culture. And I can imagine, on your travels, and similar to me, right now, but also traveling almost every week somewhere. It is so remarkable how different every region in the world is, every place, and then even within countries. Sometimes we speak even in general terms about a country like China, and then sometimes we forget that in China we have more than 140 cities of over a million people. And sometimes I have to say, when people say, "Oh, it's just a tier 4 city," yeah, okay, come on, a tier 4 city is bigger than the biggest cities in some well-known countries. So it's interesting, and so for how would you say, or what are maybe critical success factors for luxury brands when it comes to serving customers all over the world, where there's so many different expectations, different rituals, different ways of utilizing products, sometimes even different tastes. I can imagine, especially when it comes to cars, there's so many different tastes. If I look at, for example, Japan, Middle East, the Americas, Germany, and so on.
100%. 100%. I mean, for me personally, it's extremely important that you adapt to local or country-specific cultures, that you also spend time in the country to better understand why clients are choosing this and not choosing that. Bespoke, I said it a couple of times now in our little podcast here, is for me very, very important. And Bespoke gave us all the opportunities, obviously, to cater for each individual taste pattern and to do whatever clients were asking us they wanted to see commissioned in their Rolls-Royce. So on top comes, I think that you also need to make an effort that you engage more with maybe local other brands, other luxury brands, local ones, that you are starting to cooperate, maybe also in countries with local brands, that you make an effort to position your brand as eye-opened to other foreign cultures. And I think that is super important, particularly for younger generations out of those countries. It is important that Western brands are at least making an effort to adapt to local cultures and to make an effort to get a certain, I call it now, Chinese cliche as well into their brand proposition in China, which is not artificial, which needs to be authentic, but obviously you make an effort to adapt yourself to a local culture.
Yeah. Maybe one or two more questions, because this has been such a fascinating discussion with so many, where we already have so many insights that you shared. If you basically reflect on your tenure at Rolls-Royce, when you think about maybe your personal learnings about luxury, but also in terms of leadership, and some you have in the different questions already referred to, but what were in your point of view, when you think about what you know today about luxury, and maybe what were your assumption going into those roles? What were maybe the most significant personal learnings, and what can you share maybe to others who aspire to become leaders in the luxury world?
I mean, it is not easy to put that into a nutshell. That takes hours to talk about that, what needed to really get into the luxury segment. But I would say one of my fundamental learnings is client centricity, and client centricity in a way that the client is not only in your mind, the client is constantly at your heart. And that is something what you need to live and what you also need to showcase to your own people every day, every single minute, that only the client counts, nothing else. And that is, I think, extremely crucial in the luxury sector, extremely crucial. Learning number one. Number two is bespoke, in my view, is crucial, because luxury today isn't any longer off the shelf. You need to give clients the chance to interact, to be part of the brand, also to give them the chance to put their own taste patterns into the brand and to fulfill own dreams with the brand. And then you mentioned it, I mentioned it, storytelling. I mean, many brands don't make an effort to reflect on what great stories they could potentially tell. Me personally, I think when you make the effort and when you really delve into history and when you delve into how you build product and so on, there are lots of stories your clients will be interested in.
Wonderful. And maybe one last question is, if you reflect on, it's kind of funny to use the word reflect on the future, but if you kind of think a little bit about where for you the future of luxury is from what you've seen, you already spoke about, coming from maybe the world of, let's call it maybe a little bit of more superficial luxury, the bling bling, towards maybe a world of more content today, of more relevance. You also spoke about being part of something, so the community aspect. So we're moving from product to to creating value for the client as a whole. So if we now go another 10 years or 20 years into the future, where would you say would be one or two things that you expect to become much more relevant in the future than they are today?
I would say probably sustainability, ethical practices are more and more important in future. Digital innovation is super important, not only using advanced technology, but also what I would call a seamless omni-channel experience. We talked already about customization and personalization. That is going up to new levels in future. I'm pretty convinced about it. Cultural relevance, we talked a minute ago. So put local insights into your brand. Generate an authentic storytelling. What makes you great in China? Why is your brand so relevant for China, just to stick with China now, or Middle East or whatever? Health and wellness is something I'm personally extremely convinced about, is something that plays a role in future. That holistic well-being approach, the wellness integration, incorporating wellness elements into your product design, all that becomes important in my view. And then obviously, I said in the beginning, the whole social responsibility thing, community engagement, inclusivity, diversity, very, very important for luxury brand. All these facets obviously need to be played in a luxury way. And I have quite some ideas in my mind how that could all be done. But that would be now a podcast for the next 8 hours.
Yeah, wonderful. So no, this was great, and just reflecting while you were giving those points in a very precise way. From sustainability, you spoke about digital customization, personalization, the cultural relevance, authentic storytelling, and then what really resonated with me was this idea of health, wellness, the holistic well-being. So in a sense, we can really see if we maybe put this holistic well-being almost like the ultimate goal to go. There's really a transition, that a fundamental transition that has been happening and will happen. And I don't want to say away from product, because one of the things you just mentioned was more an integration into that.
Absolutely.
I think maybe less in a way of maybe less in a traditional engineering way, where it is all about kind of taming the machine and making things maybe as perfect as possible, but in a sense thinking about the human and thinking how can we enrich the life of the human through our products, through our services in the best possible way. But thinking about this in a non-compromising way, because all of the things you mentioned, from sustainability to cultural relevance, personalization, fundamentally says we have to put the human at the center, and we have to make something very humanistic. And so, from what I observed in our conversation is fundamentally we have to think about luxury and the transition of luxury from a maybe very product-centric approach 20, 30, 50 years ago to a very human-centric approach between now and the next 10, 20, 30 years. And that also...
It will be, Daniel, it will be an extremely holistic approach that is needed in the future, which is not only reflecting, let's say, the product in itself. That is given. The product needs to be great, perfect, but it is not sufficient. You need to have a great service level. You need to have fantastic client interaction, and you need to read your clients, and your clients are constantly on the run, and they have constantly new ideas and wishes. I just mentioned a couple of them where I think they will become highly relevant in future. So you need to develop, I call it an ecosystem for your luxury brand that really reflects on all different areas that are important in future for the client, because the client is the king and the client is the one who buys your brand.
Yeah. And this means also that in a sense, to build that ecosystem, we need to also think in a completely different way about skills, in a completely different way about the approaches. And it also makes me so enthusiastic about what we want to do together, because these are things that we will be able to provide to organizations, to look into those kind of skills, to prepare organizations in this transition from where they are today into what the customers of the future,
Exactly. What is really needed to elevate your brand? If the strategy should be, let's try to elevate the brand into even further levels and higher levels, then obviously you need to understand the codes for that and what is needed to make that happen. And I think that's it, Daniel.
Yeah, super. Wonderful. So, Thorsten, thank you so much for your time today. That was a pleasure. And and I think this is one of the I think will be one of the highlights of the podcast series. Thank you really for sharing with everyone your invaluable insights, your story, the learnings on the way. And we will share also your contacts in the show notes so that everyone who wants to contact you knows how to reach you. So thank you once again.
Perfect. Lovely. No, thank you, Daniel. And looking forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, thank you.